Revealed. How one son's shocking threat transformed his family's love in an incredible 30-day journey. Jake Baxter stood in the dim light of the family auto repair shop, where the clanking of tools was drowned out by the echoing silence of unspoken frustrations. The smell of oil mixed with the nostalgia of his childhood memories weighed heavy on his shoulders, where expectations sat like a boulder. He wanted out, needed out. Yet every time he glanced at the grease-stained walls, he felt his father's dreams pressing down on him. Dreams that mirrored his own unfulfilled longings. It had been years since his father, once a proud entrepreneur, proudly proclaimed the shop would remain a family legacy. But now, with bills piling up like car parts in disarray, the shop felt less like home and more like a cage. Jake wrestled with the secret he had kept buried beneath layers of loyalty and fear. The dream of becoming a mechanical engineer. A dream that some would say echoed the ambition his father had thrown aside. The thought twisted in his gut. Could he really chase a life beyond this shop? Or would he succumb to the suffocating pressure of family duty? As dusk settled, Jake's racing mind collided with despair. He recalled his mother's frail form, the worry etched in her face as she struggled with her health, needing both emotional and financial support. Every day, he felt his dreams slip further away, as his father's pride kept him tethered. Could he abandon them in their time of need? But the thought of giving up on his own aspirations left him hollow. He needed resolve and clarity, or he would be stuck in an endless cycle of regret. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With his heart pounding, Jake confronted his father one restless night, almost against his will, each word spilling from his lips like hastily spilled oil. If you can't support my dreams, then I'm leaving this place behind. The silence that followed was deafening, slicing through the air thick with anger and betrayal. His father's expression shifted from shock to hurt, their tumultuous bond hanging by a thread. The threat seemed to echo off the crumbling walls of the shop. Not a simple ultimatum, but a declaration of war against a legacy that had long defined them. Powerful waves of anguish surged within him, consuming Jake as he saw his father's eyes. Eyes once gleaming with pride, now dulled by weariness and failure. A part of Jake wanted to take back his words, to soothe the storm that was brewing. But another part found strength in the confrontation, in the liberation that his choice could provide. Would they crumble under this pressure? Or could they rise to redefine what it meant to love each other? As the tension thickened, he retreated into his thoughts, grappling with fear and determination, searching for a way forward. With each tick of the clock, hope swirled dangerously with uncertainty, while deep-seated family truths stung his conscience. Would confronting the hidden injustices of their past unravel everything they had fought for? Jake stood at a precipice, the sheer weight of it all looming before him, wondering if he could ever find a balance between the dreams that called to him and the family that clung to him. A balance that felt increasingly out of reach. Jake spent the following days in a tumult of confusion and doubt. Each minute in the shop felt like a countdown to an inevitable decision he could no longer postpone. With every rotation of the wrench, every beep of the air compressor, his heart screamed for change. His father's disappointment weighed on him, a constant reminder of the confrontation that had shattered their delicate understanding. Yet the threads of guilt and obligation wrapped around him like stubborn vines, pulling him back into the very life he yearned to escape. He needed to breathe. So, one afternoon, he escaped to the nearby park. The sun bathed the landscape in warmth, and he sought solace beneath an old oak tree, its gnarled branches reaching skyward as if urging him to do the same. Here, away from the shop, he began to map out a plan for his future. He scribbled furiously in his worn notebook, ideas tumbling out like oil spilling from a broken canister, messy, yet necessary. His sketches of mechanical designs reflected not just what he could create, but who he aspired to become. Each line he drew whispered a truth he had buried deep within, a truth that demanded recognition. Yet with each stroke of the pen, another wave of doubt crashed over him. What if he didn't succeed? What if chasing his dreams meant abandoning his family? The mere thought frightened him, but the fear of inaction terrified him more. He envisioned an engineering degree, the potential to innovate, to transform dull metal into groundbreaking solutions. This vision fueled a flicker of resolve within him, urging him to carry on despite the storm raging inside. But how could he pursue this path without tearing apart the fragile fabric of his family? The answer suddenly seemed daunting. It wasn't just about him. It was about them. What would his mother say? Would she support him, or would his father's disapproval taint her affection? That evening, Jake sat at the kitchen table, tension swirling in the air like steam from a boiling pot. His mother hummed softly, immersed in her knitting, while his father muttered about the day's troubles with the shop. Jake's heart raced. If he was to bring this up again, he needed to tread carefully. He could see that the anger from their earlier confrontation had seeped deep into his father's bones, unwilling to let go easily. "Dad, can we talk?" Jake finally mustered the courage to break the thick silence. His father looked up, the weight of exhaustion etched into his face. "I've been thinking about the future. My future." "What about it?" His father's tone held a mix of weariness and indignation, as if he were guarding a fort under siege. Taking a deep breath, Jake prepared to launch into the depths of his soul, to share the conflict that had become unbearable. "I want to explore becoming a mechanical engineer. I want to study, to learn, and—" His father's face hardened. "And what? Abandon your family? Abandon this shop?" Each word cut deeper than any wrench ever could, and now the bitterness of reality seeped back into the conversation. Jake fought back, refusing to back down this time. "No, I want to bring something new to this family. I believe we can redefine our legacy." The silence that settled was uneasy, rich with unresolved emotions. They stared at each other, both defiant, yet fraught with unspoken love. They stood at a crossroads, two lives colliding, bound by blood, yet divided by dreams. That night, Jake couldn't find sleep. He lay in bed, his mind racing, the shadows in the corners of his room swirling like storm clouds, charged with electricity. One thing was clear. If he truly wanted to change their story, he needed to confront not just his father, but also the fear that had long dictated his life. But what if, in the process of pursuing his dreams, he lost his family completely? The tension was palpable, and as the clock ticked away, the moment of truth felt closer than ever, while a deeper question lingered in the air. Would he have the courage to confront the painful realities of their collective loss? The silence of the night wrapped around him, urging him to make the choice that could redefine everything. Dawn crept into Jake's room, filtering through the blinds in soft, hesitant rays. He lay still, grappling with the cognitive dissonance that plagued him. Was it possible to reshape his destiny without risking the family ties he so dearly valued? The shadows of night receded, but the storm in his heart raged on. That morning, he made a decision. Rather than waiting for the confrontation to arise again, he would take charge of the narrative he had allowed to be controlled by others for too long. Practical, analytical thinking had always been his refuge, and it was time to embrace that strength. He sat at his desk, the journal spread out before him, and began outlining a concrete plan that didn't just revolve around rejection or dodging conflict, but embraced communication and courage. He mapped out his goals, the prerequisite courses he needed to take, the scholarships for which he could apply, the engineering clubs he could join. Each note sparked a fire within him. This would not merely be a dream. It would be a tangible pathway toward a better future, not only for him, but for his family too. By investing in himself, he could also invest in their shared legacy, making it richer, more innovative, and alive with possibility. As he wrote, a nagging fear still clung to him like a ghost in the periphery of his mind. How would he present this plan? More importantly, how could he ensure that it wasn't regarded as a betrayal? If he was to shift the family dynamics, he needed to alleviate the grip of guilt, the stranglehold of obligation. It was not just about what he would leave behind, but what he could create alongside them. Taking a break to gather his thoughts, Jake wandered down to the shop. The familiar sights greeted him like an old friend. The comforting clang of metal against metal, the faint smell of oil mixed with sawdust. He could see the pride in his father's work, the dedication etched into every tool and project. Jake could almost hear the voice of his father echoing in his mind, reminding him that hard work came before hope. But he wasn't just a mechanic's son. He was an aspiring engineer with the potential to design beyond the limits of their small shop. "Hey, buddy!" His father's voice broke the reverie, pulling him back into present reality. "Got a minute to help me with this engine?" Jake nodded, masking the whirlwind of thoughts racing within him. As they worked side by side, he felt a flicker of hope emerging. These moments mattered. They represented the love that intertwined with their day-to-day lives, even in the stubborn silence that had become the norm since his last confrontation. "Dad, I wanted to talk to you about something important," he started, his heart racing again at the prospect of facing his father's skepticism head-on. When his father looked up, there was curiosity mingled with caution in his eyes. "Is this about the school thing again?" "Yes," Jake said, voice steady, aware that this was his chance to redefine the conversation. "I've been thinking about not just my future, but ours. I don't want to run away from our family. I want to grow it." His father paused, his brow furrowing slightly. The mechanic paused, taking a deep breath. "You sure about this? It's a big commitment." "I am sure," Jake pressed. "I've mapped out everything, what courses I need, how I can balance work and study, and how we can tie it all back into what we do here. I want to innovate, Dad. I want—" Jake rushed through his excitement, revealing his vision while noticing the initial skepticism in his father's eyes beginning to ebb. Perhaps the shift was possible after all. Yet, the doubt in his father's expression hinted at the deep-rooted fears still lurking beneath the surface. Just when he felt they were forging a tiny bridge of understanding, the familiar glint of fear returned for the both of them. "Jake, it's not just about talent, it's about stability. You think you can really manage this?" That single question suspended the moment in a delicate balance, and the weight of expectations resumed its heavy embrace, challenging Jake to dig deeper. As his thoughts raced for a solution, he realized that this conversation wasn't just about what he hoped to achieve. It was about acknowledging the uncertainty they felt together, a vulnerability he had to embrace. Jake took a deep breath, navigating the complexities not just of their conversation, but of his own aspirations. "Maybe I can start small," he offered tentatively. "Take a class at the community college, just to see how it fits." A silence fell again, punctuated by the rhythmic sounds of their labor. Behind them, the shop buzzed with life while their conversation hung heavy. Would compromise ease the tension? Would it be enough to reassure his father that this path didn't mean severing ties, but strengthening them? The shadows of doubt still loomed large, but perhaps in those flickers of hope, both father and son could find the courage to redefine their expectations. As he awaited his father's response, Jake felt a tremor of determination swell inside him. The real fight was just beginning, and he knew he must press on against the prevailing winds of doubt and fear. But would one small step be enough to bridge the chasm between their dreams? Or was the gulf wider than he imagined? The silence settled heavily between them, filling the shop with a tense weight that felt both familiar and foreign. Jake's heart beat unevenly as he watched his father process his words. This was uncharted territory. They had always shared a common rhythm in their lives, but now Jake was attempting to redefine that beat. He felt trepidation about whether he could lead them to a new measure, or if the old one would push them apart. After what felt like an eternity, his father finally exhaled, the worry lines on his forehead softening just a fraction. You think taking one class is going to be enough? There was an edge to his voice, a kicker to the question that lured Jake into deeper contemplation. It's a start, Jake asserted passionately. It'll show you I'm serious. The only way to make this work is through doing, right? His father's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. It's easy to say that, but we both know you'll be working full-time here. It's not like they offer evening classes for engineering, kid. The words stung, yet Jake could hardly blame him. He was stepping onto a path that altered the entire landscape of their lives. But where there was hurt, there was also resolve. Maybe not at first, but once I see how it fits into my schedule, who knows? Listen, his father finally said, wrestling with his own doubts. I want you to succeed, but this is new for both of us. Jake felt the breakthrough. His father's tension slowly dissolved into a tentative exploration. What if we could build something together? Something more than just cars and engines? What if I could develop designs that might change how we work here? The question hung in the air. There was a flicker in his father's eyes. It wasn't fully acceptance yet, but perhaps curiosity skittered at the edges of doubt. I don't want to lose you to your aspirations, he finally murmured. You think going to college will leave this place behind? It wouldn't. You're still a part of this. I'm not leaving you behind, Jake insisted, feeling the firm base of his motivation surface. I'm trying to elevate us. At that moment, Jake felt like he was standing at the brink of an abyss, ready to leap into unknown territories of ambition and uncertainty. Yet the foundational fear of disappointing his father urged him to reassess. How could he chase his dreams while ensuring he did not alienate his family? Inspired by this thought, he took a step closer. How about this? I'll show you how serious I am. I'll commit to one class and share what I learn with you. We can innovate our projects together. The glint of hope began to shimmer in his father's gaze. And what if it doesn't work? Then we'll adapt, Jake responded, standing taller. Every project has its glitches. We'll refine it, just like we do with your engines. I've learned so much from here. It has shaped my understanding. But it doesn't mean we can't create something new with that foundation. His father finally cracked a small smile, albeit cautious. You really believe you can balance it all? For the first time I do, Jake said, a surge of newfound confidence rising within him. The earlier fear dissipated as he realized that the narrative wasn't just about balancing tradition and innovation, but evolving them hand in hand. As the days slipped into weeks, Jake felt the tides beginning to shift in his favor. He enrolled in the community college and tackled the engineering class with a fierceness he hadn't anticipated. Each lecture fueled both his intellect and imagination. For the first time, he was engaged in discussions with peers who shared his passion, yet the duality of his life weighed heavily. Every night, he returned home to the shop, where the sounds of routine seemed to taunt him, with a reminder of his responsibilities. Would his father's approval strengthen, or become a source of resentment, as he devoted more time away from home? Jake found himself in a delicate dance of managing expectations and aspirations, punctuated by late-night walks, where he wrestled with his commitments. On one particular evening, as he strolled through the quiet streets, a revelation struck him. He had been pursuing external validation through his studies, but the true challenge lay in seeking validation from himself. He realized he needed to cultivate self-acceptance, making peace with his decisions even when they diverged from his father's vision. This was a lesson that wouldn't come easily, steeped in introspection and perhaps missteps along the way. But as he turned a corner, he spotted a new engineering club poster in the window of a cafe. The urgency to join built up within him, a surge of empowerment. Would he gather the courage to step beyond both his fear and the familial expectations lightly clawing at him? With determination thrumming through his veins, Jake approached the door, more aware than ever that stepping through inertia into action might finally bridge the widening cracks in his life. But just as he reached for the handle, a fleeting thought ignited a storm within him. What if pursuing this path would drive an even deeper wedge between him and his father? Would the urge to create something remarkable outweigh the profound uncertainties still lurking beneath the joyous surface of his aspirations? Jake stood at the edge of the cafe, heart pounding, wrestling with the internal tempest swirling within him. The poster fluttered lightly against the glass, an invitation to step into an exhilarating new chapter. Yet the looming specter of disappointment immobilized him. What would he gain from this engineering club? A sense of belonging or further alienation from the reverberating roots at home? As he finally pushed the door open, the bustling ambiance enveloped him. Laughter filled the air, mingled with the sound of espresso machines humming industriously. It was a world painted with potential and collective ambition, starkly contrasting the solitude of his evenings, filled with uncertainty. He took a deep breath, reminding himself that this was another step toward his aspirations. Yet, doubt clawed at his resolve. Could he balance the enthusiasm here with the expectations at the shop? The members of the engineering club welcomed him warmly. Each smile and handshake felt like a lifeline, affirming his presence amongst like-minded individuals. Yet, a shadow lingered over him. Every interaction sparked memories of his father's face, etched with skepticism. What if his involvement here disconnected him entirely from their shared journey? As he engaged in discussions about projects and design ideas, he observed the ease with which his new peers expressed dreams. Plans so grand, they seemed almost unattainable. Yet Jake, drawing on the foundation of knowledge from the shop, started to contribute his ideas, sharing innovative thoughts on efficiency and design improvement. To his surprise, his suggestions were met with enthusiastic feedback. It was exhilarating, but with each compliment, the tinge of guilt crept back. Was he abandoning the core of what they built together? Sessions turned into late nights filled with spreadsheets and design software, and Jake found himself flourishing. Creativity blossomed like vivid flowers after a long winter, but every moment spent away from home echoed back to him, questioning his commitment to family and tradition. One evening, roused from his thoughts by laughter, he focused on a group presenting a project on sustainable automotive design. Their ideas danced out like musical notes, vibrant and original. But his father's disapproving gaze flashed through Jake's mind. Would their innovative models make his father's craftsmanship feel obsolete? Would he be viewed as a traitor to their legacy? The following morning, unsettled by the clash of excitement and the knot in his stomach, he returned home to the shop, wearied yet eager to share his new insights. As he entered, he found his father hunched over an engine, the familiar scent of grease and metal enveloping him like a protective mantle. "Hey, kid," his father greeted, cracking a cautious smile. "I could use a hand here." Jake's heart raced. This was the moment to reveal what he'd learned. This was the opportunity to show that innovation could enhance what they already had. "Dad, can we talk? I've been working on some ideas." But just as he opened his mouth to speak, the unease flashed anew. What if his father dismissed his ideas outright, claiming they strayed too far from tradition? What if the shared history they fortified over the years was abruptly fractured by his newfound ambition? As they began to work together, he watched his father's hands fluidly turn wrenches, his dedication palpable. Each twist of the tool seemed to signify the lineage of hard work, a legacy Jake was suddenly terrified to dismantle. "What's on your mind, son?" his father asked, pausing to gaze intently at Jake, sensing his hesitation. Jake opened his mouth but closed it again. He didn't want to overcomplicate things. He felt as though he stood at a crossroads, facing the choice of risking everything he cherished for the prospects gleaming in his academic pursuit. However, just before he could articulate his thoughts, a stray comment from a fellow club member echoed in his memory. Challenges only exist when you're unwilling to adapt. Hadn't he just spent weeks doing exactly that? Adapting to a new environment, managing a demanding schedule, and now preparing to innovate alongside his father? The path forward remained shrouded in uncertainty. Yet Jake felt the ember of determination ignite within him once more. As he began to speak at last, the weight of decisions loomed larger than ever, holding immense potential for both triumph and conflict. Would he transcend familial expectations, or fall prey to them? "Dad," he began, heart racing, fueled by growing conviction. "I think we could change things here." But as he spoke, a flicker of realization struck him. Could not pursuing his ambitions lead him down a path of destructive complacency? It was not just about pleasing anyone anymore. It was about embracing a self he was only beginning to understand. Everything hung in the balance as his father's eyes shifted from bewilderment to contemplation, fraught with possibilities. A moment of truth approached them both, melting into a silence thick with the weight of uncharted futures. What awaited them in that silence was still unknown, but Jake was ready to navigate it, even if it meant confrontation. The question apace was now about not just innovation in design, but loyalty, respect, and the evolution of their bond. What trajectory would they chart together? And would they emerge unscathed or transformed in the throes of ambition? With the air crackling around them, the answer loomed dangerously close. Jake's pulse quickened as he searched for the right words, each syllable trembling on the tip of his tongue. He had never felt so vulnerable, nor so powerful. This was not just about engineering. It was about his identity. He wanted to honor his father, yet he also craved the courage to explore his own ambitions. His father's eyes bore into him, a mixture of anticipation and uncertainty reflecting back. "Dad." He pressed on, taking a step closer. "I've been thinking about how we could blend new technologies with the traditional methods here. Imagine a sustainable garage. Solar panels powering the tools. Parts sourced from recycled materials. We wouldn't be abandoning what you've built. We'd be creating something that honors it while moving forward." The silence stretched, filling the space between them like a tangible weight. Jake watched as his father's expression shifted. There was a flicker of intrigue, perhaps even hope, but it was tangled with something else. Fear. Jake could feel the stakes rising. This wasn't just a proposal. It was a challenge to the very foundation of their relationship. "What you're saying, it's different. And you know your grandfather built this business on reliability," his father said carefully, splintering the newfound tension. "Our customers trust us for our craftsmanship, not flashy new ideas." Jake felt his enthusiasm dampen but clung to his convictions. "Dad, it doesn't have to be flashy. It can be practical too. Remember the discussions we had about efficiency? This could help us serve our customers better. Attract a whole new clientele." His father straightened up, wiping the grease from his hands. "But you know how people are. They come here for the authenticity. Would they accept changes?" The doubt in his father's voice pierced through Jake like a chilling wind. A visceral part of him ached to forcefully dismiss the concerns, to assert his newfound insight and resourcefulness. But standing there, he understood the complexity of heritage. Their shop represented years of tradition, and with it came the weight of familial expectations. Yet another voice echoed in Jake's mind. The voice of his peers from the engineering club. Moments flashed before him, illuminating the path he'd begun to carve. What if we're afraid to put ourselves out there? What if the risk of change brings growth, not just failure? He muttered almost to himself. "What was that?" his father asked, brow furrowing. "Nothing. It's just a thought." He hesitated, wrestling internally. "Can we try a small project? Just a prototype? If it doesn't work, we can abandon the idea. But if it does..." The silence resumed, thicker now, a simultaneous moment of negotiation and reckoning. Jake realized it wasn't merely a clash of ideas. It was a contest of values. Innovation versus tradition. His aspirations against the legacy crafted through labor and sacrifice. "Jake," his father began, a hint of exasperation mingled with concern laced in his tone. "I want you to be happy, but I don't want to lose what we've built. It's a big leap." Jake nodded, desperation threatening to spill over. "I understand, Dad. I don't want to lose it either. I just think we could make it better. Together." At that moment, he witnessed a subtle shift in his father's stance, a crack in his usual stoicism. What began as skepticism morphed into contemplation. That flicker of possibility ignited a spark within Jake. As their conversation lingered, Jake found himself caught between the thrill of innovation and the dread of familial loss. Could he pursue his ambitions without alienating the most important figure in his life? He let that thought linger, crystallizing the understanding that both worlds, the old and the new, might not be as mutually exclusive as they seemed. As the weight of his father's gaze settled on him, the path forward played out in his mind, alive with contrasting visions of hope and anxiety. What if, instead of confronting his father's legacy, he could weave his ambitions into its fabric? But as that thought simmered, a sudden realization took hold of him. The challenge before him would not just test them together, but would demand sacrifices. Perhaps even a redefinition of love and loyalty. Jake held his breath, bracing for the next moment. The acknowledgement of sacrifice, and perhaps the first step onto a more turbulent path. "Dad, this is more than just a project for me. It's about proving that we can evolve together." The warmth of the shop felt increasingly stifling as the tension approached its zenith. Jake sensed the decision looming, perched precariously on the edge of their aspirations. Would his father capitulate to change, or would they spiral into conflict? Every heartbeat echoed the urgency of his silent plea. Would his father embrace the leap into the unknown alongside him, or stand firm in the shadows of tradition, creating an insurmountable rift between them? Jake trembled with anticipation. A reckoning awaited them both, and the truth of their journey together hung delicately in the air. This was just the beginning. The real challenge was yet to unfold. What awaited them on that fragile precipice? The air hung heavy between them, laden with uncertainty as Jake awaited his father's response. Despite the silence, thoughts cascaded through his mind, each one sharpening his resolve. He had spent countless nights envisioning this moment, crafting ideas that would bridge their worlds. But now, standing in front of the man who embodied tradition, he felt the weight of legacy pressing down on his conscience. "Jake." His father began slowly, his voice steady but tinged with restraint. "Change is like a wild river. Sometimes it sweeps away what you hold dear before you even realize it's happening." "I get that," Jake replied, a fire igniting in his chest. "But what if I want to build a dam to guide the river? We can harness it without losing what we've created." His father's gaze shifted, a mixture of pride and apprehension flickering in his eyes. "It's easier to stay on the bank, son. Trust me. You might find that the water's not as inviting as it seems." For the first time that afternoon, Jake felt his throat tighten. The temptation to retreat into the comfort of conformity pulled at him, but he pushed against it, determined to carve his own path. What if we combine our experiences? Use the river's energy to power new innovations? His father watched him carefully, as if weighing every syllable. In that moment, Jake realized his father's apprehension ran deeper than business. It was about their bond, his father's fear of losing the son he once knew. But Jake couldn't allow a fear of the unknown to hold him back any longer. "Let's test the waters," he said, stepping into the metaphor. "We can start small, do the prototype and see what happens. We wouldn't be throwing everything away. We'd just be adapting." There was a palpable shift in the room, but his father remained non-committal, arms crossed against his chest as if shielding himself. Jake pressed on, fueled by a blend of fear and fierce determination. "Dad, not embracing change feels like allowing mediocrity to win. I don't want to settle for what's comfortable if there's more out there for us." The silence that followed felt like a battleground, one where Jake fought not just for his ideas, but for his relationship with the man who had shaped his identity. "Fine. Prototype it." His father finally sighed, still sounding hesitant. "But if it jeopardizes our integrity or alienates our customers, we revert back to the old ways." A wave of relief washed over Jake, invigorating him with fresh energy. "Deal," he said, excitement bubbling beneath the surface. It was the first step, a small victory in their intricate dance of tradition and progress. This was more than just a project. It was the start of a dialogue, a collaboration between two generations that could redefine who they were as a family. In the following weeks, Jake submerged himself in the challenges of the prototype. He pored over diagrams, sourcing sustainable materials, and integrating them into their existing practices. Each successful iteration inspired him, but he remained aware of the scrutiny that loomed from his father. As they worked side by side, Jake sought his father's feedback, although he could feel the shadows of doubt still lingering. One afternoon, as they tested a new solar tool attachment, a small flicker of recognition sparked in his father's eyes. "If we do this right," he mused, watching the sunlight catch the polished surfaces, "we might just give our customers something new without losing the heart of our craftsmanship." The moment brought warmth to Jake's heart. Perhaps his father was beginning to see the potential in change, understanding that evolution didn't equate to loss. But even amidst this budding collaboration, a deeper worry gnawed at Jake. Would their revised trajectory come at a cost? He felt the familiar swell of anxiety hit him as he grappled with the notion of pushing forward without fully assessing the consequences. What would happen if they ventured too far into the unknown? Late one night, just when the quiet was settling in, Jake turned the question over in his mind. Inspiration burned as a new worry arose. Could he face the backlash of their loyal customers? What if the shift was perceived as a betrayal rather than an evolution? The challenge before him now was not only to innovate, but to navigate the choppy waters of perception. Each adjustment made him question how deeply embedded their legacy was within the community, and the more he dug, the more he found threads of pride and resistance woven into the fabric of their clientele. With every conversation he had, he began recognizing the importance of nurturing that connection, the necessity to protect their foundational narrative while also introducing new ideas. Suddenly everything felt intertwined. His aspirations, his father's fears, the legacy, and the community. Jake stood at the intersection of tradition and innovation, heart racing, knowing change was imminent, but uncertain of its implications. He faced the next chapter with hopes aflame, fully aware that the truest challenge awaited ahead, balancing the relentless pursuit of his ambition with maintaining the relationships that structured his identity. As he prepared for a critical meeting with a long-standing customer, The words echoed in his mind. What if this is where we find our identity renewed, rather than eroded? It was a notion that both frightened him and filled him with anticipation. What if he couldn't bring everyone along on this journey? The dawn of that day felt charged, and Jake knew. The real test loomed just around the corner, demanding every ounce of resolve he possessed. Would they be ready when the moment arrived, or would it lead to the unraveling they both feared? The morning light dripped into the office like a fresh start, illuminating the clutter of plans and sketches sprawled across Jake's desk. Today was pivotal. The meeting with Mr. Harrison, a widely respected figure in the industry, had the potential to either lift their prototype into the limelight or send it crashing down under the weight of skepticism. Jake could feel the adrenaline coursing through him, a mix of excitement and dread that made him acutely aware of every second ticking away. As he prepared, his mind churned through possible objections and counterarguments. What if he views this as a threat to our identity? He thought. The legacy his father had built was intimidating. Not just to outsiders, but even to him. A tangible representation of the stability and comfort he had always known. It was time to confront the very fear that had kept him at bay. He had to articulate why evolution was essential, why they couldn't merely stand on the shoreline, watching as the world changed around them. The drive to Mr. Harrison's office felt endless, each passing mile a countdown to an inevitable confrontation with the unknown. Jake rehearsed his pitch, wiping beads of sweat from his brow as he mentally battled self-doubt. Would his passion translate into conviction for someone outside their family bubble? Could he draw Mr. Harrison into the thrill of innovation without triggering alarm bells? Once he arrived, the stark minimalism of the office only heightened his unease. Clean lines and bright spaces loomed over him like an executioner's block, amplifying his nervousness. Mr. Harrison appeared cool and collected, a fixture of authority that Jake both admired and feared. As they exchanged pleasantries, Jake felt a familiar instinct to downplay his ideas, to reshape them into something that felt safer. But he silenced that voice, recognizing it as the fear of confronting change. "Let's get to it," Mr. Harrison prompted, leaning back in his chair, fingers steepled in front of him, seemingly already skeptical. Taking a deep breath, Jake plunged into his presentation, each word carefully chosen to weave together the threads of their family legacy with the vibrant potential of innovation. He laid out the prototype's features, the sustainable materials, and the ways they could engage their existing customer base while attracting a new demographic. He watched for Mr. Harrison's reactions, searching for any flicker of interest. But the man maintained an inscrutable expression. In the midst of his pitch, an unexpected question arose from Mr. Harrison, cutting through Jake's momentum like a sharp knife. "How will your existing customers respond? What makes you think they'll embrace this change?" Jake hesitated. In that moment, he realized he had been so focused on selling the future that he had overlooked one of his greatest responsibilities, honoring those who had stood by them. "It's not just about them accepting change," Jake countered, feeling a fire reignite inside him. "It's about showing them how our evolution can honor what we've built together. We want them to feel included in this journey, to see that we're not abandoning our roots, but nurturing them for the next generation." For the first time that day, he saw a flicker of curiosity in Mr. Harrison's eyes. It was as if Jake had stripped away the corporate veneer, exposing a human element that resonated with the veteran businessman. But Jake knew that one small glimmer of interest wasn't enough. He needed to make a deeper connection. "I understand their perspectives might be rooted in fear," Jake added. "But our commitment to quality and craftsmanship will never waver. This prototype represents our promise to innovate while respecting our heritage." As Jake spoke, he felt a shift in the room, an undercurrent of understanding threading through his words. The silence that followed was deafening, yet there was an openness that hadn't existed moments before. Mr. Harrison leaned forward, a new intensity igniting his interest. "This," he said slowly, "could be a forward-thinking solution. But you'll need to be prepared for backlash. Not everyone adapts easily." His voice was steady, yet it was underscored with a warning they both understood. Jake's heart raced. He realized that he was right on the precipice of something significant, not just for their business, but for his own personal journey. This was a crucial pivot point, one that would set the course for not only the future of their company, but also for his relationship with his father. Jake nodded firmly, ready to accept responsibility for the challenge ahead. "We will engage with our customers, communicate openly, and take them along every step of this journey. I believe we can turn skepticism into support." As the meeting wrapped, Jake felt a new sense of clarity wash over him. This wasn't merely about selling a product. It was about forging a path that would help him grow into the leader he aspired to be. A bridge between the past and a promising future. Driving back, the implications of their conversation weighed heavily. Balancing innovation with loyalty would be a constant challenge. Jake realized that hoisting the mantle of leadership would require fortitude, not just for him, but to unite the many perspectives he had yet to encounter. But another thought soon consumed him. How could they transform potential backlash into an opportunity for engagement? What if he involved the customers in the design process, inviting them to be part of the evolution? The path forward shimmered in his mind, and with it came renewed determination. His father was counting on him to lead, but he would need to tread carefully, for the stakes had never been higher. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Jake contemplated his next move. He had ignited a spark, but could he turn it into a blaze that would warm not just his family, but their entire community? The question loomed, one that promised great rewards, or devastating consequences. The next morning brought a whirlwind of activity that buzzed around Jake like a swarm of bees, each task more pressing than the last. He arrived at the office early, driven by an insatiable need to move forward, a sensation both exhilarating and terrifying. The tightness in his chest reminded him of yesterday's challenge with Mr. Harrison, and it only fueled his determination. He needed to act decisively and assertively, transforming his newfound clarity into actionable steps. Sitting at his desk, he visibly reorganized his thoughts. The prototype was more than a product. It was a conduit for legacy, growth, and community engagement. Especially after Mr. Harrison's warning about backlash, he understood that he had to tackle potential resistance head-on. Ideas coursed through him, each one a possibility for not just growth, but also for rejuvenating the very fabric of their loyal customer base. Jake grabbed a notepad and began mapping out a plan, starting with a series of community engagement sessions. He envisioned forums where customers could voice their thoughts and concerns, coupled with workshops that allowed them to interact with the prototype firsthand. If they feel like they're part of this journey, they'll be more likely to embrace it, he mused. The more he wrote, the clearer it became that this would not just be about selling the new design, but fostering a connection that honored tradition while inviting innovation. But as he devised strategies, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. What if his attempt to engage backfired? What if customers felt their opinions were being solicited only to be ignored? How could he ensure that the invite to participate didn't turn into a ticking time bomb of dissatisfaction? These questions loomed over him, casting shadows on his otherwise brilliant ideas. Shaking off the anxiety, he resolved to treat feedback as a gift rather than a vulnerability. He recalled his earlier conversation with Mr. Harrison, the heat that ignited in their exchange when he shifted from selling a product to sharing a vision. That felt empowering, and it reaffirmed his conviction that navigating this innovation required both bravery and humility. By mid-morning, he had assembled a core team, his closest colleagues who shared his vision. They gathered in the conference room, a mix of excitement and trepidation crackling in the air. As they dissected the prototype's features, they brainstormed potential questions he could face at the upcoming customer engagement sessions. What if we framed it less like a presentation and more like a discussion? One colleague suggested. It struck a chord with Jake. Rather than a top-down directive, he could cultivate a collaborative environment where everyone felt heard. This was a radical departure from the company's traditionally structured approaches, but it felt right. Authentic. Jake felt a bubbling surge of exhilaration as he implemented this approach. Slowly, the blend of anxiety and excitement transformed into something profoundly affirming. They crafted pamphlets explaining the sessions, including the importance of blending new ideas with cherished traditions. Each draft felt like a step further into reclaiming not just the business's identity, but his own. As the day progressed, an unexpected email pinged on his screen. An invitation to speak at a local business forum about innovation in established industries. Initially reluctant, the prospect of public speaking sent another wave of self-doubt crashing over him. Yet this was an opportunity, an avenue to further expand on his thoughts regarding their community engagement. He could use this platform to reinforce his messaging, to rally support that resonated beyond their customer base. Still, a part of him hesitated. The possibility of public failure loomed large, admonishing his progress. Yet there was no denying the sense of purpose that surged through him. This could scintillate interest across the region, not just for their legacy but as a beacon for innovation itself. In a decisive moment, Jake clicked accept. The fear of failure danced at the edges of his consciousness, but he saw it for what it was, a chance for growth, a pathway toward proving to himself and others that he could lead effectively. As he left the office that evening, the horizon was alive with rich hues of a setting sun, a visual metaphor for his burgeoning resolve. He stepped forward, embracing the friction of risk. Yet lurking beneath this newfound courage lay an unspoken fear. How far could he push before it all unraveled? The atmosphere shifted. The stakes were rising. He would need to prepare not just for potential pushback from his customers, but also for the weight of his father's expectations. He was no longer simply piloting a product, but navigating a deeply personal journey toward leadership. With his vision crystallizing, the second question loomed larger than before. What if the very traditions he sought to honor became the chains that restrained his aspirations? Jake gripped the steering wheel tightly, wrestling with the complexity of his situation. The walls of inheritance bore down on him. Was he destined to reshape a future under the shadow of his past? That moment of quiet reflection breathed uncertainty into his thoughts, nudging him toward a revelation he had yet to recognize. As he drove home, he sensed an opportunity unfolding, but the landscape of his challenges remained daunting. If he was going to pivot toward a brighter future without severing his ties to the past, he would have to confront the most formidable opponent of all, the fear of inadequacy that haunted him since childhood. How could he rise to the occasion without alienating those who held onto the past so tightly? The path forward shimmered tantalizingly ahead, but only if he could find a way to bridge his family's legacy with his own burgeoning identity. What lay ahead promised to be a defining confrontation for Jake, not just with others, but within himself. Jake stood at the threshold of the auto repair shop, the fading sunlight illuminating the familiar tools and machinery that had shaped most of his life. The weight of his journey pressed against him. But for the first time, he felt not just the burden of expectation, but also a burgeoning confidence. Today, he would not only confront his father with the results of their collaboration, but also reinstate their familial bond, forged anew through shared passion and innovation. The past weeks had unfolded like an intricate blueprint. After the community engagement sessions, Jake had witnessed an incredible shift in customer attitudes. They embraced the prototype enthusiastically, offering insights that refined its features, helping him understand the fine line between tradition and modernity. Each interaction bridged the gap, and he had felt their loyalty swell, like air filling a balloon. The prototype, integrating essential elements of sustainability, would not just serve as a business venture. It symbolized their legacy, an evolution rather than a rejection. Every successful presentation to Mr. Harrison, every enthusiastic response from their clients, echoed through him, reaffirming that they could forge ahead together. With a deep breath, Jake entered the shop, where he found his father hunched over an engine, the familiar routine providing a sense of stability. "Hey, Dad," Jake called, his voice steady yet tinged with excitement. His father turned, wiping his hands on a rag, curiosity mingling with wariness. "What's going on?" Jake felt the intense gaze analyzing him, a reflection of both pride and reluctance. "I've brought something important. I want to show you how our prototype is being received. The customers are excited, Dad. They see the vision of combining innovation with our heritage." His father raised an eyebrow, skepticism creeping back in like an uninvited guest. "Is that so? Let me see what you got." This was it, the moment Jake had prepared for, where he would blend the old with the new. He led his father to their workspace, where blueprints and vibrant images of the prototype adorned the table. As Jake explained the intricate workings of the design, he could feel the warmth of anticipation growing, feeding off the resolve he felt not just for his dreams, but theirs. His father's brows furrowed, but he listened, intent on understanding. "You really think this will appeal to our clients?" There was cautious optimism hidden within the question. "I do," Jake replied fervently. "This approach honors everything you've built here. This isn't just about me. It's about expanding what we represent. We can keep our legacy intact while inviting more possibilities." In that moment, the walls that had divided them began to crack. The hard layers of tradition softened as his father considered this idea, the potential for growth lighting his eyes for an instant. Each enthusiasm Jake demonstrated ignited glimpses of hope. They connected. The barrier between them waned as the realization settled. This was not a distraction from their work, but rather a newfound avenue for growth. As the days turned into weeks, Jake witnessed his father's gradual acceptance. They worked together, melding ideas, discussing the prototype's features in the workshop banter that had once felt like a far-off dream. His father, initially unyielding, began to embrace the innovation, even proposing tweaks based on his years of experience. Then came the day of the unveiling at their customer appreciation event. Jake stood before a crowd of familiar faces, including Mr. Harrison, basking in the warmth of unbridled support. Taking a deep breath, he articulated their journey, intertwining the past with the potential of the future. "Today we aren't just celebrating a product, but our shared legacy," Jake exclaimed, eyes glistening under the bright lights of the shop. "We stand together, not only as a brand, but as a family united by history and ambition." The crowd erupted in applause, their cheers sweeping over Jake like a confirmation of his growth and contributions. But more importantly, he saw his father's face, a man who had once feared his departure, but now stood proudly beside him, embodying the fierce resilience of their shared journey. In that culminating moment, Jake felt as if he not only achieved his dreams, but also unveiled a strength born out of vulnerability, acceptance, and love. The journey had transformed him, from a young man wrestling with the shadows of expectation to a capable leader ready to resonate with others while remaining tethered to his roots. As for his father, respect radiated from him now, an acknowledgement that the legacy could blossom brighter than before, with openness to growth. Their bond tangled in newfound understanding, a dynamic intertwined not just by blood, but by a collaborative spirit that promised a bright future. This victory was more than a business success. It was a testament to deep personal transformation. Jake had succeeded in redefining what it meant to be part of a family, establishing himself as an architect of their legacy, one where dreams not only persisted but flourished together. As he left the crowd behind, the evening sky bathed the shop in gold, reflecting the potential of both the old and new. He could hardly believe how far he had come. The once timid young man now renewed by confidence, armed with a dream, and more significantly, equipped with familial love and support. This was a milestone he would cherish, a tangible result of perseverance, courage, and the power of embracing one's journey. Now it's your turn to step into your own journey. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's incredible transformation and his family's journey. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support, because this is the moment for true fans of personal overcoming stories.